Here are the neurons that I created. The body is from tangerines, and I used Twizzlers and candies and cat food. You might think it's gross, but I have a pet cat at home, so I figured I can use it. So the cell communication. Let's start with this neuron, and let's assume that this neuron received a signal. For instance, a neurotransmitter binding to its receptors, causing the pores in the membrane to open. And so because of the resting membrane potential, where sodium is more concentrated on the exterior of the neuron than the interior, when the gates open, the sodium will want to come inside down the concentration gradient. So this makes the interior more positively charged, which is a process called depolarization. And when the threshold of excitation is reached, even more pores open and it causes more influx of sodium ions, where we reach the peak of the peak action potential. Then the potassium gates open and then repolarization occurs. And then so this process occurs down the axon to the terminal like wave, so that the signal can propagate like all the way through. So if the signal reaches down to the terminal, the synaptic vesicles will then release the neurotransmitters. Say these are the released neurotransmitters, and then the receptors from the adjacent neuron dendrites, it will receive the neurotransmitter, which will then and then this whole process will repeat again, of course assuming that the signal will be powerful enough to reach the threshold and start the action potential. So the drugs can influence neurotransmission by either acting as agonists or antagonists. Agonists can basically mimic a certain neurotransmitter by having a very similar structure, so they can bind to the receptor of that neurotransmitter and then elicit the same kind of response. And antagonists, on the other hand, they are similar enough to bind to the receptors, but they do not produce the same response of their neurotransmitters, so they actually end up inhibiting or blocking that neurotransmitter from getting the response they are supposed to. So they are the inhibitory kind of molecules.